Hi, and welcome back to It's Not Rocket Science 5 Questions Over Coffee. I'm delighted to say I have my coffee in front of me. I've probably had far too much of this already today, but we keep going because that's the name of the show, so I must drink it. But I'm delighted to be joined by James Robertson. James is an engineer with 30 years experience who now is applying his massive engineering skills to understanding the human side of things like these systems, these ERP systems, CRM systems that we all have to use, and trying to understand exactly how the human side sometimes interacts with those hard IT things which don't always work. So, James, welcome to the show. I'm looking forward to our conversation enormously.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm looking forward to.
So tell me a little bit about the sort of person you're trying to help with these problems that they've got.
Stuart, my ideal customer is the CEO of an organization that is frustrated with their business information systems. And as you said, that could be ERP, CRM, it could be even AI for that matter. WMS, TMS, any of these big business information systems that run part or all of an organization. If the CEO has just not getting the value that they expected when they signed up for what is generally
Mm.
a very substantial investment, I can come in and in 2 days, I guarantee that I will tell you exactly why it's not performing. And I'll tell you that in language that you understand. And I will tell you that 99% of the time, it will not be a technology related issue, although most people
That's
will
a
see it as a technology issue.
that's quite a it's quite a well it's a fascinating area to dive into, James, and it's quite a bold claim to say that you can do it in 2 days. So I wonder what is the problem, the thing that the CEO has probably been trying to do? How long have they been wrestling with this issue before they come across somebody like you?
Sometimes for years.
Yes, yeah.
Just to elaborate on the point that you made, the reason I'm so bold about my claim, if you go to a general practitioner, doctor, medical doctor, they'll ask you 2 or 3 questions. They'll take your pulse. They'll maybe measure your blood pressure. They might take your temperature, and they will stack those readings up against years of experience and massive knowledge, and they will say, okay, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning, or don't do anything, I'm calling an ambulance now, or anywhere in between. I'm much the same. I will come in, I will ask you some key questions, I will listen very attentively for some keywords that you may use, and I will then say, right, this is how you fix it, or it can't be fixed at all, and we need to set about procuring a new system, and anywhere in between that.
And as you say, the CEO, the CFO, many of the key leaders in the organization have probably struggled with these issues for many years in an attempt to sort of get to the bottom of things. And they're doing it well without the knowledge you have and from a position of, well, this thing was supposed to do this, so let's keep trying until it starts to do it. And that's often a highly detrimental state to be in, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking now of an investigation I did for a major listed company, and chatting to the CEO, he said, we've got this big ERP. It was one of the big brands. And he says at the operational level, it's doing 90% of what we want. At the executive level, it's doing 10% of what we want. And he had five senior chartered accountants. When I say senior, their company cars were Mercedes C class, and they were spending all month, every month, preparing the board pack because he couldn't get
Mm,
what he wanted out of the ERP. And the reason he couldn't get the information out of the ERP was that the ERP was just so badly configured. So
mm.
he could fix that problem. It would have probably taken 6 to 9 months to fix the problem, but the problem was fixable. But he was looking at the technology and blaming the machine when it was the people using the machine that was the problem.
Interesting insight. James, I think you, excuse me, I think you've got an offer that might be useful for some of the people who are currently listening to or watching this. And I'm showing that on screen. This is a free consultation you offer, And I don't know if you want to give us some details of this, but it's if you email james.robertson at the-erp-doctor.com, that's james.robertson at the-erp-doctor.com, and that email address will be in the show notes. James, do you want to just tell us a little bit about, the sort of thing that happens during that consultation, so that, hopefully we can encourage a few people to take that offer?
Stuart, it absolutely would. What I'm thinking in terms of is probably about an hour. It could be more, it could be less. I'm not stuck on the hour. And I will ask some of those questions that I just mentioned to you, and I will make an initial headline diagnosis of what I think probably are the issues. It'll be a tentative diagnosis. I would then need to come in and spend a day or 2 days with your people, look at the system, look at the data, talk to a few people who are experiencing the problems at the level of the C-suite, and I will then either be able to confirm that diagnosis or refine it, or maybe find that the initial diagnosis was off the mark, although I'd be surprised if that happened.
Brilliant. James, tell us, I mean, you're obviously a huge amount of experience. You're an engineer with great qualifications. What brought you? Was there a particular program, a book, a course? What brought you from an engineer to somebody who's now looking at much more human-centered issues and systems?
Have you got all day?
We have as long as you need.
Stuart, there are a couple of key milestones in getting to what I do now. The first was when I finished my PhD research, I had a lot of data. I'm talking now 1981. My dad bought me one of the first desktop PCs on the market. I learned how to use it. I computerized his business, and in the first year, he was able to double his turnover because he could do things that nobody else could do. He was an investment consultant. So from that, I learned that A, I had an aptitude for doing clever things with computers, and B, that you could add huge value to an organization by doing those clever things. I then moved on. I worked for an engineering company, and as a side hustle, if you want to call it that, I took over their IT function, and I project managed and partially architected the design and development of what in those days we called a management information system. I'm talking 1987. Today, that product is an ERP, and again, very dramatic benefits to the business. I then went out on my own because I thought I'd got this aptitude. I started speaking at conferences, and what started happening was chief executives, presidents, etc., would come up to me during the break and say, "Dr. Robertson, we're having problems with our systems. We really like what you're saying, but we're not getting anything like that." And I would start going in, and I found that in 1 to 2 days, I could tell them why the system was not working, and I could tell them how to fix it. And I've been doing it ever since. And then I've developed other things in terms of strategy, etc., and helping a rigorous procurement process and so forth that go hand in hand with that.
Do you know the concept of the rigorous process for procurement, I think, is probably as important as anything, isn't it, James? Because one of the problems that we often find with these things is it's the expectation at the beginning that has been set, which causes the issues. I've been involved in a number of these situations where people will say, "Well, we thought it was going to do this, or we had asked for this," and unfortunately, it's very often the case that was never going to be possible. And that's where the problems came from.
Absolutely, Stuart. So the process that I've got a very robust request for proposal document about, depending on the client, it's sort of 45 to 60 pages. And it closes all the loopholes that are traditionally used by IT service providers to negotiate change in scope. I then do a strategic definition of what the requirement is, and I take the process through a rigorous process of scanning the market to find the most appropriate software and to find the most appropriate implementer, and then lock that down into a very watertight contract and a very strong, achievable fixed price. And I then manage that whole process through that. But part of it is, again, knowing what the typical shenanigans are, if I can use that word, that are used by implementers to go in with a low price and then push the price right up, and to also to make sure that the definition of what's required is properly documented, because so many people go out to procurement with just a long wish list of anything that they can think of. And what I do is I bring it down to 7 critical requirements, weighted in terms of the relative importance, and then I design the entire project around those 7 factors. And those factors are determined in consultation with the CEO and the rest of the executive suite.
That's brilliant.
I think one of the things that's different about what I do is I always start with the CEO and I work top down from the executive suite. So I make sure that I understand the strategic view of what this thing is supposed to do. And the same with diagnosing the problems. Yeah.
That's great news. James, there must be one question at the moment that you're thinking, he hasn't asked me about this, which is the real key thing. And so therefore, I'm just going to sort of ask at this stage if there is a particular question that you think I should have asked by this stage. And obviously, as you know the question, you then have to answer it for us. So what's the key question that I haven't yet asked you?
Why is it that so many systems work fine at an operational tactical level, but are absolutely useless from a point of view of supporting strategic decision support?
Interesting question.
And
what is
the answer? I've touched on that. I've touched on that fleetingly a couple of times already in this talk. It's basically that people do not know how to start a project at the executive level and define the strategic requirements at the start, and then build the entire solution from that point of view. Or if you're remediating a situation, if the things that I've talked about, the same applies, that you go in at the executive level, you understand from an executive point of view what the issues are, and then you cascade that down into the nuts and bolts of how the system runs. And one of the things that goes horribly wrong with so many projects is the CEO says, I don't understand IT, and delegates to the CFO or the CIO or the COO or the IT manager or whatever. And those people do not have, it's not their responsibility to have the overarching strategic view of the business. So they start with a finance bias or an IT bias. And I hate to say this, but a lot of IT people are so focused on the gee whiz of the technology that they do not have any comprehension of what strategically. So you'll find an IT guy saying, yes, we must go with the latest upgrade, when the correct answer from a strategic point of view is, you know what, this is doing the job, we don't need to go with the latest upgrade, for example. And that's a hot topic at the moment.
And I think you're referring to the fact that certain systems at the moment are now getting to the stage where they need to be upgraded to the latest version, which involves quite a lot of cost and quite a lot of effort, but may or may not end up delivering the value that the business requires.
Absolutely. You know, the technology now is very mature. The bulk of the systems out there, the ones that have been around for the last 20 years, are mature, they're stable, they're getting the job done. We're now going into a mode where those vendors are coming and saying, well, we've got the new latest and greatest, biggest and best, and we're going to move to cloud, and we're going to move to SaaS, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. Oh, and by the way, it's going to cost you £100,000 or £1 million or whatever the case may be, and it's going to take 9 to 18 months to implement it. And we don't really want to talk about it, but there's going to be a whole lot of business disruption while you do that. Profits are going to take a bit of a knock while we do it. And at the end of the day, we're not actually sure what the strategic business value is going to be. And I'm now saying to people, you know what? There's a little known legal principle which allows you to say to that vendor, you know what? I'm not going to take that upgrade. And that's the secret sauce that we can talk about on that call.
That's a really brilliant cliffhanger on which to end this series. I presume series 2 will start with that answer and move us on to other answers. James, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us and giving us those insights. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. I'm going to take a little moment now just to sort of do a bit of a plug for myself. I send out a newsletter every week which just says who's coming up on the podcast in order for you to join these LinkedIn Lives and to be able to ask questions of people like James. And I'd love you to join that newsletter. So would you please go to this link, which is https://link.thecompleteapproach.co.uk/newsletter. That's link.thecompleteapproach.co.uk/newsletter. Join the newsletter, get an email just once or twice a week with who's coming up, what they've got to say, and at least be able to get in on the conversation so that you're able to get the answers to the questions you've got. James, in the meantime, whilst we wait for people to get all of that down and to reach out, I'd really like to thank you for coming onto the show today and talking about this very important topic. And I do hope that you're able to, once again, help more businesses get more value out of the systems they've invested a lot of money into, but somehow don't quite manage to do everything they need them to do. So thanks for coming along and telling us about it.
Stuart, it's been a great pleasure. And the interesting thing about it is you can take a system from down there to up there, sometimes quite easily. So I look forward to hearing from your listeners.
Terrific. Thank you, James.